Okay, we'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council in 10 seconds. Except for I have a pen. Okay, ready? Very good. I'd like to request, we'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. I'd like to request a roll call, please.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer. Aye. Connor. Aye. Boys.
Aye.
Hannah.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Thanks. I'd like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the last meeting.
Motion to accept.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Hearing none, they carry. Today we have a number of items that are up for public hearing. The procedures is that what we'll do is we will first get a reading from the planning department and they will make a recommendation referencing the conditional use request or whatever is up for public hearing. After his report, we will then ask that if anyone here wishes to testify before the committee, to please be sworn in by the clerk, Sarah Biviano. After that, we'll then open up the public hearing and ask for comments, of which we will ask for your name and your address. After that, we will then open it up to the committee for questions and then all of council. Now, if there's any questions, they'll be asked at that time. We will repeat the process, though, at 5 o'clock this evening, the only major difference being that the council will then vote on it either in favor, against, or to table the item and take time. Refer to the next week agenda. So that's the procedures. And with that, the first item, Ms. Biviano, could you please read that in? Thank you.
The first item up for public hearing today is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to vary the rear yard setback to construct a retail building at 435 Darrow Road and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Zoran Matajan is requesting to vary the rear yard setback to the east by 4 feet in order to construct a new retail building. The proposed building measures 80 feet by 44 feet with 2 separate storefronts. Construction materials will include face brick on the front and masonry material on the north, south, and east sides. The building will utilize 2 existing curb cuts while eliminating a third in order to permit a total of 16 hard-surfaced angled parking spaces in front of the building. A 6-foot solid wood fence would be installed along the eastern or rear property line. One goal of the Land Use and Development Guide Plan is to promote the preservation and revitalization of viable business districts by providing viable shopping areas with room for businesses to expand their facilities. The subject lot has been vacant for over 20 years, having formerly held a gas station. The planning staff's of the opinion that the proposed development and improvements will suitably reactivate this long vacant property without imposing on neighboring properties. The requested 8-foot rear yard setback is consistent with the petitioner's retail buildings to the north and will similarly allow a suitable amount of parking. And both planning staff and planning commission recommend approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. With that, I'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak before the committee to please stand and be sworn in by Sarah Biviano.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you. I'm going to turn your microphone on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next time, if you could please raise your hand, please. Thank you. Yes, sir. If you could please provide for us your name and address.
I'm Zoran Matain, and I'm the owner of the property. And I don't know if I have to testify or not, but I'm asking for permission. Setbacks are now 12 feet, and that's not giving me enough area for a parking space. So I'm missing about 4 feet. So
Okay.
I'm asking the setback for 8 feet instead of 12.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for coming down this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yes, is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor or against the item at 435 Darrow Road? Anyone else? Hearing or seeing none? We'll invite you back this evening at 5 o'clock, and the committee will make a recommendation to all of council at 5 o'clock, yes. Thank you. Mr. Anthony, or Sarah Biviano, item number 2, please.
The second item up for public hearing is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to construct a residence providing for storage of more than 5 vehicles at 2010 Stockbridge Road and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Antonucci?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Paul and Jean Tamarios are proposing to construct a new single-family dwelling with an accessory structure in the rear yard of the new residential property. They're proposing to build an attached garage to the new home that will hold up to 12 vehicles and a detached garage up to 22 feet in height that can hold an additional 4. The proposed two-story brick dwelling will be set back over 120 feet from the property line with an attached 6-bay garage facing the 32-foot wide driveway along the south side property line. The attached garage will have 6 bays for vehicles, each with an installed car lift so it can hold double the number of vehicles that can be stored. The proposed single-story detached garage will measure 21.5 feet in width, 33 feet in length, to a height of 22 feet. It will be situated at the end of the driveway over 200 feet back from the property line and 18 feet 2 inches from the south or side yard property line. It will contain 2 parking stalls that will also have lifts to double the storage of vehicles. In all, 16 vehicles could be stored within the garages on the property. The detached garage will be constructed with a brick veneer facade and asphalt shingles that will match the construction of the new house. Gutters and downspouts will be tied into the residential storm drains for the house. Petitioner states that both the attached and detached garages will be used for parking their personal vehicles and to allow them to house their historic car collection. The additional 5 foot in height for the detached garage would be unnoticeable to neighbors on the wooded site and will allow the structure to keep in character with the new home. The attractive new residence and garage structure is a significant investment in the neighborhood, which will provide for personal storage of historic vehicles out of the elements and view of neighbors. And both the planning staff and planning commission recommend approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor or against, testify before the committee? If you could please stand and be sworn in by our clerk, Sarah Biviano. Thank you.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Matthew Wolf. I live at 3099 Yorkshire, Cleveland Heights, Ohio. It kind of summed it all up. I'd say that during the last meeting down here, it was also noted that there's everyday car use, and that the historic cars are truly stored. They may be driven once, if no times at all during the year. So we've also talked with the neighbor and have agreed to do some screening, both landscape and fencing along the side of the garages. I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is David Knowles. I'm at 2020 Stockbridge Road. I came last time here to hear about the plans. I don't know if I need to be sworn in or...
Yes, you do, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you. Thanks.
Once again, thank you. We had an opportunity to speak with the architect and with the Tamaros afterwards and things, and we're in agreement with regards to, we believe that, you know, some amiable type of solution can be remedied between our properties. And so I think my wife and I are about the closest one to this whole issue that's going on within here and things. And, you know, we're looking forward to our neighbors coming into here and looking forward to kind of beautify the area within there as well, make great use of the property and everything along those lines. And I just went through about 4 weeks of leaf blowing, so I think the noise we can understand in terms of wherever I was coming from last time about it. So I think some cars or things like that in there, you know, we can understand in terms of this is his private collection that's on there. So again, I want to make this a positive experience of them moving into the area, and hopefully the community will think so as well. And looking forward to us moving forward and having some good neighbors next to us. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor or against this proposal? Anyone? Okay, very good. Hearing none. Of course, you're welcome back this evening at 5 o'clock, and the committee will then make a recommendation. Is there any questions or comments from any committee members? Any council members? Mr. Bolden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've talked to a couple neighbors that were concerned on the front end, but after they see what type of house is being built, they're much more in favor of it. And actually talked to another gentleman that actually his business is right next door to Mr. Tamarius, and he was very excited that Mr. Tamarius is moving into Fairlawn Heights. So we're glad to have you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, very good. Not hearing any. Oh, yes.
Do I have to?
Yeah, you probably should swear in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
I'm Jeannie Thamarius, Paul's wife, and I can attest that most of the cars haven't moved in a year. They sit plugged in so the computers don't go dead. Once in a while, we took one to the Kidney Foundation fundraiser for Tadero's down at San Hewitt. That went out once this summer. That was it. So it's not going to be noisy. It's not anything crazy. We're not parking them in the driveway, 30 cars. So I just wanted to let everyone understand that that's not what it is. They stay mostly parked and plugged in to a tender. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Thanks. And again, you're welcome this evening at 5 o'clock. Or if you wish to Zoom in, you could also do that as an option. Thank you so much. Very good. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we will now move on to, I believe it's item number 3, referencing 989 North Portage. Viviano.
The third item up for public hearing today is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish an arts and cultural resource center at 989 North Portage Path and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Antonucci?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens is proposing to establish an arts and cultural resource center at this location. In order to address critical infrastructure needs, Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens, Inc. is proposing to acquire the nearby vacant World Harvest Church to repurpose the facility as an arts and cultural resource center. The 13,700 square foot structure contains a sanctuary, hall, kitchen, office, and classroom space. The paved parking lot with 115 spaces is east of the building. Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens has stated that repurposing the former church site will enhance their ability to fulfill their mission as a cultural, environmental, and historic site. Owning the former church site will strengthen their ability to serve the community by addressing their critical infrastructure needs. Stan Hewitt currently depends on the annual support of hundreds of volunteers, of which many use shared space on the property with staff or use storage pods and sheds to store resources for the estate. Additionally, Stan Hewitt does not have a dedicated space to host indoor educational programs. Furthermore, Stan Hewitt desires to be able to offer affordable space to nonprofits to help support the facility's operational costs. As such, the former church is ideal because the site offers sufficient classroom storage, office space, and off-street parking to meet current and anticipated future needs. No signage or changes to the exterior of the property are proposed. The property was Board of Zoning Appeals approved and developed in 1960 as the Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church. Since 1988, the property has also been used as a school, with the last use by the World Harvest Church. Since all activities will be indoors during normal operating hours, the proposed reuse of this long-standing facility will not be intrusive to this Merriman Hills neighborhood, and both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone here wishes to testify before the committee, if they could please be sworn in by our clerk, Sarah Viviano.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone wishing to speak. If you could please provide for us your name and address. Thank you.
Certainly. Jennifer Highfield, Executive Director for Stan Hewitt, 1085 Jefferson Avenue, Akron, 44313. So I am speaking on behalf of Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens. As you know, we are a cultural beacon for our community here and certainly want to continue to do that. But we are landlocked. We are landlocked by Portage, Garmin, Reynolds, and a railroad facility with additional historic restraints on our property that will that do not allow us to augment and change the historic nature of our property. So in order to continue to grow, and we've seen incremental and quite astounding growth in our organization, and we see that continuing to increase, we need space in order to provide the resources that we provide.
Thank you. Thanks. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify, referencing the proposal at 989 North Portage? Yes, sir.
I do. I need to get sworn in.
Oh, yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Joshua Parker, address 3317 Morewood. I am the pastor of World Harvest Christian Church, and we have had a joint relationship with Stan Hewitt for several years, and we think this will be a great home for them to continue to service the community. And so we are in full support of this transaction.
Oh, thank you, Pastor. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor or against this proposal on North Portage? Anyone else? Very good. We'll close the public hearing portion and ask if there's any questions from any committee members and/or council people. Anyone else?
It's
Mr. Bolden.
It's me again. They're both in my ward. Fully in favor of this. Stan Hewitt is not only just a jewel in the city, but is for Ward 8, as it takes a lot of events that come up through Ward 8. Work with Ms. Highfield and talk with her about what they're planning to do here. Looking forward to them as they expand over to this area. They already use it for parking in many instances, and it is just a wonderful place, and we're glad to have them. Also huge for economic development in the city too, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. Further questions or comments? Of course, you're invited back this evening at 5 o'clock. You probably know the routine at this point. And, or if you'd like to Zoom, you're welcome to do that as well. Thank you again for attending this afternoon. Appreciate you being here. Item number 4, Ms. Biviano.
The fourth item up for public hearing today is an ordinance amending and/or supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 153 Zoning Code, Sections 153.110, Certificates of Occupancy, 153.130 Enforcement, 153.140 Definitions, 153.150 Notice of Violation in order to comply, 153.199 Penalty, 153.412 Appeals from Superintendent's Decision, and 153.422 Transmission to Planning Staff and Superintendent of the codified ordinances of the City of Akron and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Antonucci?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. The city is proposing to amend the zoning code to designate the enforcement of the zoning code from the superintendent of building inspection to the director of planning and urban development, and recognizing that the chief building official of Summit County reviews plans and issues certificates of occupancy. The proposed amendments will promote efficient enforcement and administration of the zoning code. All orders to comply and administrative fines that are issued for violations of the zoning code are generated from the zoning office. Since the zoning manager reports to the director of planning and urban development, and many of the support staff are in the zoning office, the enforcement process will be more centralized and effective. Any appeal of an order to comply or administrative fine will still be required to be reviewed by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The City of Akron planning staff believes that these changes will help the city achieve its goals of providing clear, predictable, and streamlined services to its constituents, and both the planning staff and planning commission recommend approval. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone here? We'll open up the public hearing, but first we'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor or against. Please be sworn in by Representative Sarah Biviano, the clerk's office. Anyone here? Anyone? Okay, we're not seeing anyone. However, we will, to appease our friends in the law department, we will open up the public hearing and ask if there's any comments or questions. Anyone? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing portion, open it up now to the council committee for questions. I do have some questions. Okay, this is a significant change. The one piece is, though, for the law department in that, so, for example, if, say, the day would come, whereas the city of Akron would want to get the our own CBO, and we would like to operate as we had in the past. How cumbersome would that be to the city?
Well, it would be basically the same process, but in reverse.
Okay.
All right. So we would be
Makes sense.
amending this ordinance to go back to having our own CBO.
Yes. Good.
But so I don't look at this process as being cumbersome.
Yeah, okay. Well, next question is in terms of enforcement. And I'm just curious what that's going to look like because it feels as though sometimes we don't quite have as much as we would like in terms of enforcement. And wondering, I guess this would be a question for planning in terms of the, should we be looking at adding personnel for that?
Well, yeah, I don't believe that we would at this point. So right now, we're only talking about the zoning code part of things. So, currently we have the zoning code and we have, the verbiage is really going back to the days when we actually had our own building department because we had a superintendent of building inspection that actually did the enforcement and that kind of thing. So we had those inspectors. Now we work with Department of Neighborhood Assistance to help with those kind of inspections and things like that. So it just seemed it's more streamlined now that we don't have really the chief building officers with Summit County. So in name, when we send out an order to comply, on that order, it will say Director of the Department of Planning and Urban Development instead of the Superintendent of Building Inspection, who would be this nebulous person that we wouldn't really be working with necessarily. So it really just sort of streamlines the process. So all the zoning stuff will be handled through the Department of Planning and Urban Development in terms of the enforcement.
I understand that piece. I think probably, I'm assuming everyone here does. It's just, I guess I'm asking for more enforcement. We have, for example, the one we had today, there's one that has 4 or 5 conditions, and I know that there's a desire to, rid ourselves of the conditional use process. However, it's still the law of the land in the majority of the city of Akron, and there's often a number of conditions that we place on properties asking owners to do that, and it seems as though often, at times, it's not as enforced as much as we would like, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I'm just asking at this point, before budget season is upon us, that perhaps would it be prudent for us to maybe, bring somebody in who exclusively would do that, as we used to have a department that did that, a whole department that did that, which we don't have now. And so that's, like I said, it's not necessarily a legal piece, but I guess administrative.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, Councilman. And I think that as Mr. Antonucci pointed out, that the enforcement of the zoning code is primarily the responsibility of his staff, but we do rely on Department of Neighborhood Assistance for that work as well. So I think what we need to do is evaluate that partnership and make sure that we're getting them, operating at peak efficiency as we can before we kind of address the degree to which we need to add staff to fully accomplish
Yeah, just
that.
from talking to my colleagues, I know that there's a lot of situations where it seems as though, and I'm not trying to, like I said, I know we're probably understaffed. That's why I'm couching the question in that, do we need perhaps more personnel in order to enforce it? So that's going to probably be, I'm guessing, during budget time, may come up again. Because it seems as though it can be somewhat frustrating for some of us here. So I'll stop my questions at this point and ask if there's any committee members with any questions or comments at this time, and or council members. Doesn't appear to be. Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys bringing this in. Thank you so much. With that, we'll now move on to item number 5. This is referencing the EANDC and Middlebury Center Limited Liability Corporation. We wanted to provide an opportunity for council to review this document. This is a lease agreement referencing the extending the lease agreement. Dave's, I see Mr. Volman's here.
Yeah, I had not received any questions via email, so if there are no other questions, we would request that council pass the legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from anyone? on this particular item? Very good. Second reading, is this, or third?
This is the second.
Second reading, so we have to suspend the rules? Okay, is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules? Favorable report. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, the ayes have it. Going to recommend we take time on 6. 7, 8. Anything else on the regular agenda? If not, then we'll move into the new list of legislation. Item number 8, could you please read that in, Ms. Viviano?
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of the Department of Planning and Urban Development or their designee to enter into a contract or contracts with nonprofit community development organizations for the provision of neighborhood revitalization initiatives in order to carry out the intent and purpose of programs under the Consolidated Plan for Housing and Community Development for the year 2024, authorizing payment therefor and declaring an emergency.
Yes, Helen Tomic?
Mr. Chair, committee members, the City of Akron received approximately $5.8 million in community development block grant funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. As part of that budget, the city had recommended a line item for community development corporation support, and this is funded through the CDBG program. The purpose of the CDC support grant is to partner with local CDCs to invest in projects that promote growth through revitalization and repurposing of vacant, underutilized, blighted, or historic buildings, to increase investments in place-based infrastructure, random housing rehabilitation, and public services. This planning department issued a notice of funding availability earlier this year. During that process, we received 4 applications from local CDCs requesting $365,000. After reviewing the applications and determining CDBG eligibility, the planning department recommends funding all 4 CDCs at the requested amount. We did issue a memo to council on Friday outlining the program and with our recommendations.
Okay, very good. Could you please review that for everyone?
So we received 4 applications. Applications were submitted from Habitat for Humanity, the Kenmore Neighborhood Alliance, doing business as Better Kenmore CDC, the North Hill CDC, and the West Hill Neighborhood Organization.
Thank you. Thanks. Any questions from any committee members? Council members? Anyone whatsoever? Consent agenda okay on this? Or
That'll work, thank you.
Is that good? Mm-hmm. Is there a recommendation for consent?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Against, hearing none, we'll now move on to item number 9. Ms. Viviano?
Item number 9 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement or agreements to grant an easement on city-owned property on lot number 94 in Burton Township, Ohio, to the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company for the purposes of maintaining an electrical substation and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. For the past 20 years, Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company had a substation on city-owned land in Burton Township, Geauga County. This piece of legislation will give them another 10 years with another 2 renewals for another 2 10-year agreements. This legislation, they will pay us a certain amount for that easement. They have a little bit of back payment they're going to pay us and moving forward. So this piece of land, it does not abut our watershed. I mean, it's probably 25 miles north of our plant. It's about 50 miles from this building. It's north of 422 and east of 44. I mean, if you've ever been up there. So really, it's almost like farmland up there, and this is just to clean up the lease. The law department was very helpful getting this done and moving forward. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Very good, thank you. First question, what's the time frame on this? Is there a rush on this?
Well, we could put it on consent, but next week would be great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions or comments from any committee members and or council members? We're not hearing or seeing any. So this is, in essence, it's already built, it's just.
It's already there. It's been
Yeah,
there for
it's-
20 years. yes.
Right, right. They're
Yep.
not looking to expand.
So we reviewed it. We don't need it for any city business, so we're just going to let them stay there.
Good. That's what I figured. Okay, very good. Is there a recommendation for consent agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Very good, thank you. 9A, Ms. Viviano.
9A is an ordinance declaring improvements to certain parcels of real property to be a public purpose, requiring the owners of the improvements thereon to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of such service payments and related authorizations pursuant to sections 5709.40, 5709.42, and 5709.43 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency.
Very good. Is there anyone here to speak on this one? Mr. Volleman.
Yes. So we have two pieces of TIF legislation we're presenting this week. This one is out. This is Fleet Fast. If you recall, about 2 years ago, we did a development agreement with them to expand their operations out in the East End, and they are done. The values on the has been placed on the property, so it's time to TIF it, and the city does keep the TIF in this project.
Very good, thank you. Questions or comments? Consent agenda okay? Or is there a time frame on this?
Apparently, this is, I'm speaking on the second piece right now.
Okay.
So, again, we're going to work on getting these paragraphs properly understandable. This one is Liberty Commons. If you've been, I don't know if people have had the opportunity to be down there in the last few years, they have put about $5 million into that facility. And it looks phenomenal compared to what it used to look like. This would be a 40 TIF. So if you remember, we're not in the chain of title, so we do it as a 40 TIF, and then all funds have to go to public improvements. It does not necessarily go back into the project as if it was a 41 TIF when we are in the chain of title. So we are going to be looking with them. Again, the value is going to go on the property next year, so we need to do the TIF legislation now. We're going to be working with them on a development agreement that we will bring back to council to figure out what specific improvements will be funded with the TIF. But we're passing this now in order to freeze the value of the property so that the TIF is generated.
Exactly right. And just for the record, let's assume in a crazy world, we would not approve this year.
Then well, if we were to wait till if we were to pass it after the value goes up, then that's the frozen value, and then there wouldn't be the increment on top of that to actually generate TIF.
Thank you.
So,
perfect. Thank you. Questions or comments on 9A? Consent, okay?
Yes, please.
Is there a recommendation for consent? I'll make the recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good. The ayes have it. 9B?
9B is an ordinance declaring certain improvements to real property located in the Eastgate Urban Renewal Area and the Eastgate 2 Urban Renewal Area to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, providing for the collection of service payments in lieu of taxes and the deposit of those service payments in the appropriate fund, providing for the payment of a portion of the service payments to the Akron Public School District, all pursuant to Ohio Revised Code sections 5709.41 to 5709.43, the Act, and declaring an emergency.
So you may have heard a rumor that 2 years ago, we entered into a development agreement with Fleet Fast. Now, this is the piece that I was explaining a few minutes ago.
Right off the circle?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. Very good. Questions or comments from anyone? Is there a recommendation for consent? So moved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good. The ayes have it for consent agenda.
Thank you very much.
Anything else to come before the committee? Hearing none, we're now adjourned. Thank you.
Our next committee today will be the Public Service Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. Again, that's the Public Service Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Testing, testing, testing speaker. Testing, testing, testing speaker. Testing, testing, testing the speaker.
I can hear you, Sarah.
Um, sorry, I'm
Okay, it's 2:00, and our next committee of the day is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'd like to move forward and call the public service meeting to order, please. All members are present, and I'd like to get approval of our meeting minutes, please.
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor of the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, well, thank you. We have 7 pieces in front of us today, but I'm going to take number 14 out of order and present that first because we have some presenters here. So number 14 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Davy Resource Group, Inc., for a comprehensive tree inventory and tree canopy assessment and declare an emergency. And I'll start with our service director, Chris Luddle, and he can do some introductions. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee, and thank you today. Today, this piece of legislation will allow us to continue our partnership with Davy Resource Group. As you know, they've managed, they've worked with us on our tree keeper program, but this is taking it to a next level of our tree inventory and how we're going to manage all of our tree canopy, all our inventory, even up in the watershed. So I'm going to turn it over to Casey Shevlin. She'll give you a little bit of a high level of what this is about, and then John Malish will introduce the 2 gentlemen from Davy, and then John will have a PowerPoint that he will kind of manage for us, and Will from Davy will kind of go through the slides.
Thank you. So this legislation in front of you is going to provide for services and software through Davy that will enable 2 important things that we'll see and run through in a presentation. A citywide tree canopy study and a smart tree inventory. The last canopy study was done in 2019 using 2018 data. Best practice cadence for that is really every 4 to 5 years or thereabouts. So we're a bit past due for a refresh of that tree canopy information. This time we plan to include not just the city limits, obviously, we always include that, but the watershed areas in Portage and Geauga as well, and all for the same purpose. So the canopy citywide and in the watershed, the goal is capture the status and health of our tree canopy. It'll give us important baseline data, right, on canopy coverage percentage, on tree loss rate, lots of other variables that we can use to inform our decision-making about tree canopy programming, initiatives, changes to policies, things like that. And same thing for the street tree inventory. These folks from Davy and John Malish will be able to speak to that side of things a little better than I can, but essentially the same concept, right? We have not had this level of data for our street trees, you'll see in a minute, probably ever. And so it's the same concept, right? Granular data on the health and status of our individual street trees as well as the street tree sort of breadth as a whole, so that we can inform our management practices, make good decisions. So I'm going to, I think, turn it over to these folks here from Davy to give us an overview of the service and the software that we're talking about. Or John, do you want to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this inventory, the last one we had completed in the city was 1996. That was on paper and pencil, spreadsheet format. We recognized that things were changing in the industry, and in 2005, we here at the city, with the help of GIS, ended up developing our own. With that, it took a lot of groundwork to develop, a lot of man hours to physically go out there and inspect these. And without that constant updating and large labor force to do that, which we do not have when it comes to the urban forest, we that data becomes static, and it's really hard to try to manage anything when you really don't have a good baseline of what you have to begin with. Davey came out last year. We did a presentation and a demo over in the Firestone Park area, and it was actually quite impressive. Basically, they drive around with a vehicle. It's about $1 million LiDAR radar sitting on top of the vehicle, and it shoots out location points about every 1,200 every second or so, and that information comes back in. It's taking photographs, so it looks really like that Google Earth. As when you're driving down the street, you can see every single location there. The accuracy of this, though, is down to the centimeter. And I'm not to do the whole presentation here. I'll turn it over to the folks from Davey Resource Group. Here we have Will Ayersman and Jim Jenkins, and they can speak on this, and I'll cue up the presentation here.
All right, perfect. Thank you, guys. We appreciate the opportunity to present today to council. Again, John was going over some very technical, innovative ideas and technology out there. So we're happy to share those with the city and provide a very proactive data set for managing trees. So really just quick on the agenda, company qualifications, we'll, if you guys haven't really been introduced formally to Davey, we'll talk just real quick about Davey. The staff credentials, we have a lot of local folks that will be working on both of these projects. So we'll introduce you to essentially the teams that are going to be a part of that. The technology advantages, so just a quick run through of both projects, at a very high level, and then also an estimated timeline on kind of start and completion of that work. So real quick, a little bit about Davey. We are one of the leaders in urban forestry, tree inventories, urban tree canopy assessments, software for managing inventory, tree inventories, and canopy studies. To date, we've inventoried millions and millions of trees, at least over 1 million, pretty much annually. And we've, we've been around for 140 years as the Davey Tree Expert Company, Davey Resource Group, which is the part of the company that we work for. We've been providing services for over 30 years, and we are based locally over in Kent, Ohio. So smart tree inventory, I wanted to give you a little bit of background because there's only roughly 8 of these that have been done in the nation to date so far. And Akron would be actually the first in Ohio to be able to complete and conduct a full smart tree inventory. So along with being one of the nation's leaders in innovative technology. The chart that you see here, the 8 completed ones, those are the green dots. The 4 that we currently have getting ready to begin in 2025. Those are in those blue dots that you see there. So for local staff, our urban forestry operations, which is going to be led up by Jim Jenkins, we have board certified mastered arborists, ISA certified arborists, TRAC and TPAC qualified professionals that are going to be working and doing follow-up assessments on the inventory, which we'll get to in just a second. But there are local inventory staff here in Northeast Ohio that would be working on this project. And then we also have a full company of planning team members, so doing data analysis, further recommendations. In terms of the technical staff, we have the GIS, which I actually lead up that team. We have roughly about 5 people locally that's going to be working on that, and that data is going to be provided back in the current Treekeeper Canopy software, which is, Akron is using to assess canopy cover and planting metrics, so there would be no service disruption from the tree canopy assessment side. And then from the IT department, we have a few local people working there as well. And overall, 4 years of Treekeeper Canopy as a client and 6 years as a Treekeeper user. So this process would ensure no service disruptions are going to be done with this new infusion of data. So just quickly, a project overview. There's really three main components. We have the tree canopy assessment side, which Casey talked a little bit about, the smart tree inventory, which John introduced, and then a little bit more on the software and the delivery or the planning mechanism to that. First, we'll touch on the tree canopy assessment. So what you're seeing here is essentially a base map layer of land cover. This is the best management practice for assessing tree canopy change across an entire community, county, state, whatever jurisdiction you might be looking at. And essentially, this is a top-down land cover analysis. So we're looking at imagery to determine where tree canopy or trees have been gained or lost over time. We also assess the benefits with this type of data, tree canopy benefits, as well as potential places to plant trees. So we provide a roadmap for communities to be able to kind of plan out where they're going to be planting new trees over the next few years. So here's kind of a little bit of a sample of what you would get. So canopy change, we can go all the way down to census block group, census tract level. We could do canopy change in parks, different neighborhoods. There's all kinds of change analysis that you can get out of this. The priority planting, you can look at like this in terms of multiple criteria and factors such as social equity, heat mitigation, stormwater analysis. So just a few snippets of what you would get out of that change analysis and that assessment. Again, this was done back in 2019 using 2018 data. We would essentially be replicating a lot of this and updating that information to current standards with the imagery. And then new for this year, which something has not really been done, so this is a new innovation in tree canopy assessment information. So we're not only looking at just trees, in the public space, but now we're also starting to do additional types of analysis to where we can segment trees on private property so that everybody has an understanding of the height, the health, and all that from the trees on private property as opposed to just having information on public trees, and we're doing that, through our new urban forestry monitoring program. And then to introduce the smart tree inventory, that's essentially just a vehicle-mounted LiDAR system. As John had mentioned, it's fairly expensive. So it basically is creating a point cloud, which is a digital twin, is what we refer to it in our kind of line of work, which is basically you're just creating a digital copy of that tree that you're able to do additional analysis, additional review from the desk rather than being out into the field. And then the smart tree package essentially also includes an arborist assessment. So additional follow-up for any risk maintenance or risk assessments or maintenance needs for that. And the inventory should overall be less expensive than sending somebody out there to do the entire inventory. So innovations, I know this is a busy slide, but I'm really just mainly going to touch real quick on just the red kind of bolded highlighted things. So again, a 3D digital replica of each individual tree along the right-of-way within the public space. And accurate locational data, so we're inventorying trees all the way down to centimeter level accuracy. And another big pro for this particular data is the data is becoming more objective. So through the technology, through the machine learning, through the AI, you're getting more consistent metrics on each individual tree, which decreases some of the subjectivity of say, either me or Jim going out there and having a different assessment. We're actually leaning on the numbers rather than potential individual. As a part of that program, there's up to 5 photographs that get collected for each specific tree. So not only would you have the digital 3D model, you also have an actual photograph of the tree as well. And then you also look at the tree heights. Canopy spread, you could start to do outlier assessments to determine which trees are performing more worse or better than others. And then you're also able to monitor that change over time. So as you continue to do additional scans, you can really start to capture that change over time analysis. And here's just kind of a quick way to look at that. So rather than boots on the ground, we're driving the streets with vehicles. So here's just a couple of examples. So the one on the left, this is just a vehicle-mounted camera and sensor that drives around and picks up all that data, and it's essentially being processed at the time that it's being collected. And then the image on the right, that's just really kind of one of the rovers that they call it, and that's what they do to, or that's what we do to be able to inventory park trees and things like that that's off right of way. So essentially, here's what that digital point cloud would look like, or that digital scan would look like. So now you're starting to be able to segment objects out of that point cloud. So you're looking to find where all the trees are. In addition, you could also do sign inventories, curb analysis, pavements, manhole covers, all kinds of stuff that's encapsulated within that point cloud. Just not necessarily the trees, but there's also many other facets that you can get out of that information. And then just a couple of considerations that we would use to go into before we collect. We're looking at the actual city limits or the project boundary, what we call it. We look at the street center line so we can put the drive plan together. We also kind of exclude some alleys and highways, private streets, those things. So we're really looking at mainly just the public type areas. The parcels, so we know where the delineation of public versus private property is, as well as the park systems and understanding where the wooded areas versus the non-wooded areas are. And here's kind of an example, just if you're looking at a street, as to what would be considered a public tree versus a private tree. So the one on the right, would be considered a private tree because it's set back a little bit further, and it's outlined in that parcel data set that it's a public versus private tree. So after the scan, what we're essentially looking at is going through a lot of machine learning algorithms that essentially will separate the point cloud into two features, the stem wood, which is the brown kind of colored points, versus the leaves or the foliar content of the tree. So there's those, and then from there, what that's doing is statistically deriving the metrics such as the height, the DBH or the diameter of the tree, the size of the tree, the health, and all kinds of other additional benefit information from that tree. So to kind of compare real quick, we have an image on the left. This is of the current tree keeper system. So from there, you have locational accuracy of roughly around 3 feet, or depending on what the GPS, how strong the signal was at the time that point was captured. You only have a point feature, so you don't really have any structural information or outline of the tree, and you can't really visualize, what part of that tree is over potentially the right-of-way. As opposed to the new smart tree inventory, now you're starting to see a 3-dimensional scan, centimeter locational accuracy, as well as being able to see the point cloud and the tree within the map view itself. So a lot of innovation just being derived not only from the technology, but how we visualize that data. And then here's kind of a quick example. One that on the left is more of the digital tree. So that's the digital twin, so you can see the branches and the foliar leaves, the foliar content separated within the digital twin. And then there in the middle, that's essentially just a picture that was taken during the time of the scan. So you can actually match those up and visually interpret that data as it's being collected and as it's online. And then there's the content panel on the right side, which is basically giving you all the additional information about that particular tree. So getting very, very detailed within the accuracy. So I won't go through all of those, but a lot of information that's being used to assess, the health, the vigor, and potentially additional field information. So that comes to the arborist data assessment. So after the scan has been in place, the arborist will start to put together that list along with, folks here from the city to determine what actually needs to be visited in the field. So that's where you're starting to look at more of those priority trees that might need further maintenancing, or the less healthier trees. So we're doing follow-up, actually getting a person out there to do the final recommendations and inspection of those trees. And then here was just a quick summary of the process. So we start by inventorying, the trees, going through that process of machine learning, and then following up with the arborist inspections. We're looking at roughly about a 20% follow-up on the scan. And then anytime there's an issue that's found, the arborist is making those detailed recommendations at the time. And then from there, the data is going into the tree keeper software, which comes with all the additional information. And then also the integration, with the CityWorks platform. So tree keeper can integrate directly with CityWorks so that there's multiple hands that can be able to feed off of that information and see that. So to wrap it up, timeline, we recommend, starting since we're looking at kind of health and vigor analysis for the trees, to do it when there's leaf on, so that we can kind of see if there's any canopy or crown dieback from there. And then we're looking basically at roughly about a 38-week timeline, and that includes the follow-up assessment with the arborist recommendations and stuff on those trees that are, potentially going to need to be either further trimmed, removed, et cetera. So kind of going through that process, we're looking at, roughly, was that about 10 months, 10 months, so. And then just additional operation and planning support. Davey is here, where we are based in Kent, Ohio, for any additional follow-up, and those services will typically begin after the delivery of the tree inventory. And then the final things with just planning and support, I kind of mentioned that the CityWorks API, we also have the capability to do that. And then the Urban Forest Management Plan and Digital Report, this will also kind of include the tree canopy assessment, which is also extending to the watershed areas this year. And then additional training and support from the Tree Keeper software as well, which would be included in this project. So with that, I think that's everything that we have for the presentation. So thank you.
Anything else to add before I open it up for questions and comments?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with committee members of public service. If anyone has any questions or comments, Councilman Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was like maybe the 5th or 6th slide in, a lot of pink in the slide. I just wanted to know, once we get to it, I'll have a better question. One more, I think, back. Yeah, forward.
I think it was the land cover. I think it was the land cover.
Here you go. Yeah, so just curious about, because I couldn't read what the pink area was, and just kind of explain the colors on that slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So the color scheme there, the darker green that you're looking at is where your tree canopy is, your forest, your individual trees. That pink is essentially the impervious surface, so your streets, your sidewalks, parking lots, those types of things. So you can kind of see in the center of the city, that's where the dense urban core is, so you're going to have a lot more impervious surface for the buildings and everything that includes that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman DeShazer.
I just wondered, a great presentation, by the way, in helping us to understand what canopies are and what ours looks like, as opposed to, we've heard and been described in very succinct ways how much we've lost over the last century, or since Akron became a city. So 200 years of clear cut in some areas, and obviously urban development has caused us to really, all cities I would imagine, to really take an assessment. One thing that I was concerned about, or should I ask about it, is plants that are in our treescape that are not indigenous to this area. I'm wondering, what is that percentage for us, and how is that affecting us? I know we brought things that we thought would beautify the area, but they were not of the ilk for this area, and so I'm wondering what kinds of percentages we have, and how does that affect us?
We'll know the exact percentage when we have a complete inventory. We have to look at also, we are a global economy, whether we like it or not. Emerald ash borer 10 years ago came in. I mean, we were removing neighborhoods worth of street trees, where Mayfair, Ridgecrest, Delaware, Genesee, that entire neighborhood was all American white ash. And we had to, and some of those were 40, 50, 60 inches in diameter. I mean, they towered over that area, over those streets. And we spent a lot to remove those out of public safety. That was first and foremost, was public safety on that. But again, it was because of shipping. We bring items in, not everything can be inspected, not everything can be fumigated, and there aren't any natural predators here for that. So we have to have we don't want a monoculture, which is just, one species. We need to diversify. And with the tools that we have developed within our master planning plan, those tools have been developed to limit ever creating a neighborhood like Mayfair, Genesee, where we would lose an entire population. I mean, prior to this, it was Dutch elm disease. American elms were all over Akron. Then the substitute after that was silver maple and white ash. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just never knew, and I didn't know which ones, and apparently even some that I thought were indigenous to us was not, even though it was planted everywhere and on street corners and in the devil strips and everything else.
Yeah, in our master planning plan, we do have very prescribed, we're matching that tree with the site. So, but we do have to diversify. I mean, that's more importantly, just getting that message out. We have to diversify. But with this assessment and inventory, it'll allow us to become proactive rather than 100% reactive. And like I said, it would be something that we would have that would be complete, which is in urban forestry. We've never had that here at the city.
Appreciate it.
I was looking this up, and I just want to make sure I have my figure correct. What's the dollar amount on this piece of legislation? We reallocating something?
It is $469,000.
Okay. I got a couple questions, but I'm going to go ahead and see if anyone else has anything real quick, so I got a minute to think. Councilwoman Amobian, I see your hand is raised, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your question was one of my questions. The other question I have is, are you planning to do this throughout the city of Akron? And the plan is to have all of this done within 9 to 10 months?
That is correct. This is every street in the city of Akron.
And it's basically an inventory to see what we have in place now, and then they come back with a report. This doesn't include planting any trees. This is basically an assessment.
That is correct. This gives us the tools to develop that management plan, that planting plan.
So you're talking about almost $500,000 to do this?
Yes.
Huh. And there's no one else doing this cheaper?
We currently use both of these tools, the tree keeper and the canopy keeper, both for planning and current operations here at the city. It's a system that we've used the one for 6 years now, and the other one has been canopy keeper. We developed over COVID on the phone call, Zooms on a daily basis with the team here from Davie, developing that. Because basically we would get a written report, and I mean, those reports typically sit on a shelf, and it wasn't interactive. But we use this on an annual basis to determine where we're planting, what metrics we're going to utilize to move forward.
So you're saying that we're already spending how much approximately?
I'd have to look up what that contract was previously. I can get back to you on that with that number.
Okay. Thank you very much. The other question I have, do you have a diversified staff? I'm talking to the Davie company now.
Yes, yeah, we do. I'm not sure about your team, Jim, but, we do. We have multiple, so the IT team, we have a couple different parameters that we do there. We could provide those metrics to you as well. Davy Tree as a company, reports on those, so we could definitely provide those for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilman Fusco?
Yes, thanks. Everybody here knows that I'm not really a tree lover or a tree hugger, but I'm a tree advocate. And this is great legislation. And I appreciate all of the effort that has gone into this. The benefits the trees bring our city is endless in so many different ways. I do have some questions, though. Will this be community facing? We're collecting a lot of data. We're going to have a lot of data out there. We've seen situations in the past where we've collected data and we've been told it's going to be forward facing and it's not. Will this be that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, good. How will this exactly help in terms of the canopy? We are losing tree canopy, as we all know. And it's a tough battle, and I'm hearing this will help with that in terms of developing strategy. How will this do that? Can you answer that?
First, we'll be able to identify priority locations where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck. If we're concentrating on stormwater benefits, what are those areas in the city that will provide the greatest impact? With the smart inventory, what it essentially eliminates is the need for a staff of 15 people really going out and inspecting these and running these reports on a weekly basis, and gathering and then making the work orders and that action plan to mitigate the issue. This does all of that in a short period of time. I mean, I know it's 39 weeks, but really that's a relatively short period of time to look at 55,000 street trees that we have.
And last time it was quite cumbersome. I do recall going through that. It was done by hand, as mentioned previously. I just, like I said, we got this information a couple hours ago. I don't know what the time frame is on this, but I would ask the committee to consider a week's time at least, and just that much, because again, like I said, I stand in favor as one who is a tree advocate and one who recognizes the benefits and who spent a little bit of time with Mr. Malish on this, and appreciate this effort, really do. This was budgeted, I know that, and that this is something that's going to benefit our city in so many different ways. But I'd also like council to understand it too before they vote. So I don't know what the wishes of the committee are. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councilman. I appreciate it. I mean, it is a pretty hefty price tag, to be honest with you. As a council representative, I mean, I know trees are very important for our city, but obviously what I deal with on a daily basis as a city council person, we have many other priorities that I believe that we are not prioritizing, and you'll probably hear more from me moving forward, not you folks, but the city in regards to how we're prioritizing what's important in our city. I will ask this before I make any other comments. What is the timetable here with this?
Well, we wanted to get them under contract by the end of the year. So I know there's one more council meeting next week. I don't know what your timetable will be after that, but if consent, or if we do want to take time a week and we can answer all your questions this week, bring it back next week. And I don't know how many of the pieces you're going to carry on into the new year, but if we could suspend the rules next week and get this passed, it would be appreciated. We'll share this PowerPoint with Sarah. She can get it to all of you by the end of business. And if you could get back to John or myself or to me, just something simple like on slide 6, I have a question about this, and we'll get those answered as quick as we can to you. To let you know, this is You know, this is part of our commitment with our consent decree, our 2-for-1 tree replacement that we have leveraged for years. So this funding has pretty much been constant for so many, I mean, quite a few years in the past. What this is going to do is with the nursery, we're going to start in planting our own trees, growing our own trees. First, we'll be able to identify all the holes where we need to do infill, okay? The benefits for those neighborhoods that do not have trees currently. It'll tell us the size of the lawn strip. It'll see if Edison's got wires on that side of the street or the other side. As we know, sometimes our friends will come down and just chop the center out of the tree. So do not plant a tree that's going to grow up in the wires, right? Plant a tree that's going to be wider, but it's going to be fit for that lawn strip. So if it's a smaller lawn strip, then don't plant a tree that's going to break up the sidewalk. And as council members, that's probably one of your biggest complaints is the sidewalk program. So moving forward, this is going to help us prioritize what is the best for that location and get the infill. Now, a lot of that pink you see is downtown. That's why parking lots, buildings, you know, the university, that's why we see that. But there's still places that we could do infill. And the benefits of trees, obviously, everybody knows, is the cooling effect. It gets, I mean, 90-degree days in summer anymore, it's like we don't have 2 or 3, it's like we have a month. So getting more trees planted, creating that shade for our residents is going to be a big benefit for them, okay? So that's just some of the things, sir.
No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to let you folks know as I sit here, you know, a lot of the residents, they want to see some improvements in their community. Some of the solutions that we deal with on a daily basis, or some of the problems we deal on a daily basis, some solutions. And, you know, not saying trees aren't important. I support the trees and everything. So yeah, I'm going to ask the committee. I would like to take some time on this. And then I also, and I know I reached out to you, Mr. Ludlow, and this is just for everything that comes before public service. If there's a presentation, I would like us, leadership, and Sarah and her staff prepared that we're going to have a presentation before an hour and a half before the committee, because sometimes, obviously, you can see now all these other committees are going to be running over too. That I value the presentation and everything, but then it adds to the legislation. And obviously, look, we've been talking about just this piece, if that clock is correct, for almost 45 minutes. So, Mr. Bolden, Councilman Bolden.
Just a couple quick questions. Thank you for the presentation. Have you worked with other municipalities in this type of program?
For the smart tree inventory? So,
Yes.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Could we have just I don't know if there's any list. I don't remember seeing that on there.
Yeah, it was one of the first slides we had.
I missed okay.
Yeah, that
there we
one
go.
right
That's
there.
what it was. Okay,
So it
great.
is a very innovative technology. So it is.
The other question I have is, you do the inventory, figure out where we need trees. When we drop in trees, will they be dropped in digitally to that, so you don't have to go back in and do another one 6 months out or 2 months later?
Yeah, that would be handled through the Tree Keeper software. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Again, good presentation, and Mr. Ludlow hit on a lot of good points too, as far as how the trees need to fit, you know, the area that we're going to be planting in the future. So that's always good. This is for the. I noticed that, you know, it was budgeted for 750, and we're coming in here at 470 about. So that's good. It's under budget. Is this for the 25 budget then, or was this part of the 24?
No, it's part of our 24 budget, and it's on me. I mean, we've been trying to get this through, and, you know, I'm the one that's asked them to come in. I just asked them to come in Friday. So it is on me. I should have did this before, but I thought it was so important, and I think it is a big deal for the city that I said, let's make a presentation. So it will not happen in the future, sir.
All right, thank you.
No, I appreciate that, and this is important. This is very important for our city. And I'm not saying I'm against this, but also we have a price tag of $469,000, and maybe some of my colleagues aren't on the same page as me, and that's fine. That's why there's 13 of us, and we agree and disagree. This is just something that I want to make sure moving forward that I can go back to my Ward 7 residents and say, hey, you know, don't worry, we're taking care of speeding, we're taking care of snow plowing and the streets and sidewalks and et cetera. So, I mean, I just want to make sure. But no, this is a great presentation. It's just, yeah. All right, anything else before we?
I mean, if I could add, sir, once we're all done, we can come to any one of your ward meetings, specifically give a presentation just on your ward, if you thought it would help.
Councilwoman Connor.
I would love that. Coming from a very historic area of the city, our trees are a worry for me every day, and this kind of technology, you know, most of them were planted around the same time, and once they go, they could go like dominoes, boom, 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 boom. So getting in front of that not only helps the trees, but all those homes that sit not very far away from those trees. I mean, I think we're looking at a disaster if they all start dropping at once, and this technology is just will revolutionize that and help keep many homes from having their porches hit by trees that are falling because they need to be replaced because of their age.
Or be without electric for 24 hours.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right, let me see, anything else? All right, I'll leave it up to the committee to, you know, make a recommendation if it's a suspension of the rules, time, or consent agenda. So committee?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
All right, all in favor of suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Nay.
Could I do a roll call on that, Mr. Chair? Absolutely. Kamer?
Nay.
McKittrick?
Aye.
DeShazier?
Aye.
Bolden?
Aye.
Lombardo?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-1.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to go back to the beginning of our public service legislation, starting with number 10, and it's ordinance authorizing a director of public service or his designee to enter into a contract or contract without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Rexel to upgrade outdated filter controls at the water plant and declare an emergency. Chris Luddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of committee. Yes, this is to allow us to purchase outdated filter controls for all our 25 filters at the water plant. So these logic controllers manage the whole operation of our filters, whether it's the flow through the filter, as the filter starts to build up with resistance or flow through, it will automatically institute a backwash. It backwashes our filters. So these are, Rexel is the only authorized dealer that handles Allen Bradley in our region, so that's why it's sole source. So this will allow us to update our logic controls for the filters.
Thank you, Chris. Committee, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Any other council members? All right. Chris, what are you looking at for this one?
A consent's fine, sir.
All right, thank you. Committee?
Second.
All in favor for consent agenda?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Number 11, ordinance authorizing the director of public service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Rexel to upgrade the high service pump controls and declare an emergency. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the last piece of legislation, we need to update our logic controls for our VFDs, which are variable frequency drive pumps. We have 6 pumps at the water plant that pumps water out through the system. They were upgraded with VFDs years ago. It used to be when a pump, as pressure dropped in the system, a pump would start up, and you could just imagine the horsepower of these pumps. It was a great inrush of current. So these VFDs, that when they start, they ramp up slowly, which really reduces the water hammering in our system. So we currently have 2 15 million gallon a day pumps, and then we have 4 25 million gallon a day pumps. So this legislation will allow us to upgrade that logic control for those pumps.
All right, thank you, Chris. Committee members, any questions or comments for Chris? Any other council members online or in chambers? All right, Chris, what are you looking at for this one?
Consent's fine, sir.
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll place that on the consent agenda. Number 12, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction improvements to the water mains at Hudson, Aurora Road, and Herrick Park Drive in the city of Akron water service area and declare an emergency. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. This will allow us to extend our 12-inch water main, which currently is just north of the Route 80 Turnpike up in Hudson. We will extend it north, and then we will take that pipe down Herrick Drive about, almost 2,000 feet, and then we'll connect 3 dead-end water mains. And what this will allow us to do, especially in the summertime, our biggest customer is Coke up in Twinsburg. We typically can't get them enough water when there's a high demand of water in the summertime. So this will not only create some redundancy when we have a broken water main by connecting those 3 dead ends, it will also allow us to give more volume to Coke when they need it in the summertime.
Thank you. Committee, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Any other council members? All right. Chris?
Consent's fine.
Okay. Committee?
I move for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to number 13, authorizing the mayor or his designee to apply for and, if awarded, accept and expend grant funds from the Ohio EPA recycling grant for the Akron Public Works Yard Waste, Organics, and Recycling Curbside Yard Work Program and declare an emergency. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This legislation will allow us to apply for Ohio EPA grant. I'm sure you remember we recently came in for legislation to apply for a U.S. EPA grant for our whole yard waste program. Well, with this piece of legislation we're applying for is to buy a grapple truck. A grapple truck is a truck that could operated by one single employee. It has a boom on it. It has like a clam, so the driver would pull up to the residence. He would shut the truck off. He would put out the booms just to keep it stabilized, like outriggers, and then he would get on the back, operate this clam. It would reach down to the lawn strip, pick up those bushes, pick up that yard waste, put it in the truck, and then take it back to the yard for processing. So this would be a future thing. We want to go baby steps where probably going to be a drop off where you could drop off your bushes, drop off your tree limbs or that type of thing, and then we'll process them, turn them into mulch as we talked before. But we'd like to do it because everybody doesn't have a pickup truck, right? We'd like to, if you remove your bushes, you call 311, we would come out and we'd pick this stuff off your lawn strip. So that's what this is for, just to allow us to apply for the grant.
All right, thank you. Sounds good. Questions or comments, committee members? Any other council members? All right, Chris, what are you looking at on that one?
Consent's fine.
Committee?
So move for consent.
Second?
All right, all in favor of consent agenda? Aye?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll put that on the consent agenda, Chris. Number 14, we did at the beginning of our meeting. Number 15 is ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for improvements to certain water mains, part of the 2024 Water Main Replacement Program, and declare an emergency. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. In our annual budget, we appropriate money to replace aging water main. And we go that by not just the age of the water main, but the chronic break history. So if we have a water main on the street that has had 10 breaks over the last 5 years, then when it's going to make the list, okay? We also prioritize on our resurfacing list. If it looks like a street in the next 5 years is going to get resurfaced and we have one of these water mains with chronic break history, we want to get it changed. So this legislation is about 15,000 feet. We'll bid it, right after the first of the year. It's all the way from 4-inch up to 20-inch water mains that fits that criteria I talked about. This project will also, on this list we've prioritized, we'll remove 97 lead services out of our system and 89 galvanized out of our system. So with that, I'll take any questions. We will apply for a WSRLA loan, which is a 30-year loan. Currently, it's about 2.8%. So this will be paid over 30 years.
All right, thank you, Chris. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? All right, any other council members online or in chambers with us? Okay, Chris, what were you looking at for this one?
Consent's fine.
All right, thank you. Committee?
Consent agenda. Motion.
Second.
All in favor for consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to 16 and our final piece for public service, authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids or requesting and receiving request qualifications, other known as RFQs, for professional design of the Castle Boulevard Storm Outlet Project and to enter into a understanding with the Summit Metro Parks to acquire and demolish the property at 787 Castle Boulevard and declare an emergency. Chris.
So this residence at 787 Castle, we've worked on it for a couple years. We have a storm outlet sewer that goes down between this house and a budding property, which is Metro Parks, and eventually it's all Metro Parks. So this storm outlet has failed. We have worked with the resident. There was no way to get down to rebuild this without basically removing the home. We did not want to have to buy this home, but this isn't the first time that this has happened. We had to purchase a home. This time Metro Parks is going to purchase the home, and then we are going to work with them to demo the home. The homeowner has looked at property over at the residence at Good Park. But I think right now he's probably just going to move in with his daughter, so he's asked to stay there till March. This legislation is for $235,000. $10,000 will be spent right away for relocation, and then the rest of the money we will work with Metro Parks on a design to put in a glorified rain garden to slow this water down, to stop the erosion from keep going to other houses down the line. So we don't have to worry about the one side, it's all Metro Parks property, but we do not want this to happen again, so we're gonna reconfigure this storm sewer after the house is demoed. Like this legislation said, we'll put it out an RFQ for design, and we'll work very closely with Metro Parks on this acquisition, demo, and repair of this storm sewer.
All right, thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Anyone online or anyone else? Okay. What's your pleasure on this one, Chris?
Consent's fine.
Consent, thank you. Committee?
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion, a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your presentation, and nothing else become for us. We are adjourned.
Our next committee of the day will be the Public Safety Committee. Those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hanna, and Davis. We'll get started in just a moment here. Thank you.
I'll figure out. Okay. And how many times we do it? It's the same thing. Because the day, every other week, the day after.
Okay, we're ready to begin the Public Safety Committee. Again, those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hannah, and Davis. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Viviano. I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee to order. We have previous minutes to approve. If I could get a motion.
Motion to approve previous minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have one piece to come before us today. It's an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with the language line for the provision of foreign language interpretation services to the Akron Police Department, declaring an emergency. We have Captain McCosey with us today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you. We're coming to you for authorization and approval for a contract with Language Line. Language Line is a organization we've been working with for years, and the original contract was actually back in 2020. The amounts were so small that it didn't require coming to council at that point, and we really didn't expect it to rise to this level. However, over the last few years, twice over, the amount of work that we needed from them has doubled, and so as a result, we're coming to you for approval for this contract that now has gone over or come to that $50,000 mark for approval. So Language Line provides us with interpretation services for foreign languages. It's a key part for our not only our radio room and communication center, but also our officers on the street. So we're asking you for approval of that contract. The total amount we're asking for is for approval up to $65,000, and we believe that that will carry us through.
Thanks for that presentation and the information. I'm just curious, was there any discussion at all with the fire side of safety in regard to this? Because I know they have similar issues as well.
We did not directly involve them in the conversation, although indirectly through the communication center. Oftentimes that's where they run into the issue, or they call us out and we bring them out sort of on our side of the contract. So certainly that if they needed us, we'd be more than happy to help out. It's all one force.
Okay, great, thanks. Are there any questions from any committee members or any other council members? Jan Davis, Councilwoman Jan Davis.
There you are.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many calls, how often do you use the Language Line? Monthly, annually, or daily?
We honestly, we have a bill every month.
Did you say a meal?
A month.
Okay.
Every month we have a bill from them and I have this in front of me, in 2024 so far we've spent $15,000 on interpreting services across the year. It actually started out, it was around $2,500 back when we first started this contract. It was before I moved into this role. But over the last few years, it went to $4,000 and then $6,000 a year, and now we're up to $15,000. There's just a greater need in the community for these services, for us to be able to communicate with folks with different foreign languages that have settled here, and so that's why we need them.
Okay. And so how does it work when you get a call in from someone that does not speak English? Do you then have to dial into another number to get an interpreter on the line? Is that?
That's correct. And in some cases, they will, all these requests go through the radio room, through our 911 center, and they're the ones that help us coordinate that. Oftentimes, this is for interviews at a scene, a call that the officers are called out to. They need some help understanding what's going on, and so they'll get that interpreter on the phone.
Is there any, I just read recently somewhere, I briefly read it, I wish I had paid more attention to it, where they have AI technology that they use that can automatically interpret?
We've heard of that. We have not really looked into too much of that yet. We are looking at some AI technology, though, across the spectrum of our services, but it's really too early to get.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilman Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, I'm in favor of this. I would just imagine a lot of these calls for language interpretation come from Ward 2. So this legislation
Indeed
needed to be passed yesterday, but now this is a good service, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Councilman. Any other committee members? I do see Councilwoman Amobian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, how long have you used this particular service?
We've had a contract with them since 2020. I believe we probably used them prior to that. We also have some work that we do with the International Institute as well, depending on the circumstance. This is for over-the-phone interpretation for language line, though.
Do they send you a monthly report as to how many contacts you've had?
Yes, ma'am. We get a monthly bill from them, and that bill details what services they provided that month.
Yeah. There's one that was done countywide for all of the social service agencies. And as a result of that, it brought the fees down. I don't know if this would be helpful to the police department or not, but I'll pass that information on to you. So at least you could explore it. And by bringing all the agencies together, it reduced the fee. And it also is telephonically, as well as they have other ways of other modes of communication as well. But it was a reduced fee for everybody.
We would certainly look at that.
I'll pass that on to you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Are there any other? Yes,
Thank you, Mr.
Councilman
Chair.
Hanna.
Thank you so much. How did you come up with the $65,000 fee? Is that past practice, and how much are the interpreters paid when you call upon them?
I don't have the exact hourly rate, and it does matter what language and what time of day. So the rates kind of vary from on that side of it. What we came up with on the $65,000, frankly, was the total amount we've already spent plus our projection for next year. So that's how we came up with that. This is a contract that we actually started back in 2020. So we know what we spent over the previous years, and then we're adding the projection for what we expect into next year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. Any other comments or questions from any committee or council members? What's the time frame on this, Captain?
We would like to suspend the rules and move into the contract process.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Yep, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll get that out to council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We have nothing further to come before public safety. We will be adjourned.
Our next committee today will be the Budget and Finance Committee. We'll get started here in just a moment. Those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. Again, that's the Budget and Finance Committee, and we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, we're ready to begin the Budget and Finance Committee. Again, those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. We do have all committee members present. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Viviano. I'd like to call the Budget and Finance meeting to order. We do have several pieces in front of us, but to start off, I'd like to get an approval of last week's meeting minutes.
So moved.
Motion, is there a and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Okay, our first item, number 1, is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of advertising for bids with Sikich LLP for project management services on behalf of the city in implementing the Odyssey case management system for the clerk of courts and the Akron Municipal Court and declaring an emergency. We have our law director, Deb Matz, in the house.
Chairman, council members, thank you for your time. So these pieces kind of go together. I think you're probably aware that the clerk and the court have been working on implementing the Tyler Odyssey, also known as Tyler Justice. Tyler loves to change product names midstream. Product so that the clerk has it for their docket management and the court has it for case management. And that project stalled to a certain extent with the change in office holders and a lot of turnover in staff, but at this point, they're ready to move forward with it. And so the Sikich piece is a project management piece. Sikich would be actually representing the city in terms of project management. Frankly, they were involved in this particular project up front at the selection stage, so it kind of makes sense to keep them involved at the implementation stage. Additionally, having worked in my role as county law director with Sikich on a number of Tyler implementations across the street, I know that they're very good at keeping Tyler on task, keeping Tyler on budget, which is a fairly critical consideration, and keeping city staff moving to the extent that you know, they don't necessarily always understand what it is that Tyler's asking them for. All right, so that would be the role that Sikich is playing. It's a not to exceed amount, so they will only bill us on a time and materials basis. They will not bill us for anything any work they haven't actually done. And then the Tyler piece, or the Tyler piece, is just what remains to have a Tyler project manager and a Tyler implementation consultant involved to get this project finished. I suspect that once we get it started early next year, we can most likely have it done by June of 2025, so June of next year. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm always losing, like, where is this for? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? I see not to exceed.
The Sikich contract is for the purposes of getting it across the finish line, so it will last as long as it takes to get it done.
Okay. All right. Very good. Questions from committee members? Councilwoman Amobian?
Just curious, this is for the implementation of the case management system, is that correct?
Correct.
And Sikich is helping to implement that system?
Yes, on the city's behalf. They don't represent Tyler, they represent the city.
And Tyler is the company that's doing the case management program?
They're the company that owns the product, for lack of a better term. It's their system and we're buying it.
Oh, we're buying the system?
Yes.
It doesn't come along with them as staff helping us implement it and put it in place?
They do provide an implementation consultant and a project manager, all right? Their staff members are exclusively for the purposes of applying Tyler's processes and procedures in completing the implementation. All right, so they're going to do that their way, regardless of whether our folks really understand it or not. And so that's why it's important for the city to have their own project management staff. Now, there is IT staff that works for the clerk and for the court, but quite frankly, they're not experienced at this. Certainly, a couple of them are pretty new and haven't even been involved in this project at all. And so they don't necessarily have the ability or the bandwidth, quite frankly, to support the implementation on the city's behalf.
Okay, I'm just curious. So when you contract with Tyler or when you purchase this from Tyler, they don't customize it for your particular court system?
Well, I'll be honest, the goal is to buy the product as off the shelf as we can. Because if you customize, first, the customization costs a lot of money. Second, the customization means that there is a lot more involvement from Tyler on an ongoing basis. All right, so if we buy the system off the shelf and don't have to customize it a lot, it's better for the city in the long run. Now, I'll be frank, I wasn't involved in this in the prior years, so I don't know to what extent there has been customization. There may have been some, I'm just not aware. I can find it out, but I'm not aware.
Yeah, it may not be necessary. It's just that I was just curious that we would implement a system that doesn't come along with the manpower to, implement it to suit the customer. And then that I was thinking that would be packaged together as opposed to separate fees, or, sometimes it's an additional fee, but usually sometimes it's not that much. But
Thank you.
But that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions between committee members or council members? What would be your pleasure for this ordinance?
Consent would be fine.
Consent agenda? Okay, can I get a motion for consent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good. We'll see that that's placed on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Sure. Second piece, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Tyler Technologies to complete implementation of the Odyssey case management system and declaring an emergency. Again,
this is for the purposes of getting this across the finish line.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comments or questions with the council members or committee members? And your pleasure again would be consent. Motion for consent, anybody?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Opposed, consent agenda. Thanks, Deb. Third item here is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or their designee to enter into an agreement or agreements without the formality of advertising for bids with Amazon, Grainger, and WB Mason for the purchase of miscellaneous supplies and small dollar purchases used by various divisions and departments of the city for the period of 1 year, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this ordinance is for what we refer to as our punch-out catalog vendors. So these three vendors, Amazon, WB Mason, and Grainger, have taken advantage of some specific functionality within Workday that allows real-time pricing information when ordering small dollar goods through these vendors. So basically, it's almost like all of us experience when we're buying stuff online at home, where we have pricing and you can fill up a shopping cart, on the website and purchase items, and it will automatically create the purchase orders for those items. So because of that specific functionality, we kind of single out these three vendors separately and get this ordinance to authorize purchases through them.
Very good. And again, this is for this year's budget coming up?
This will be for the 25 budget, correct?
Okay, very good. Questions from committee members or council members? Okay, your pleasure.
Consent is fine for this.
We do have a question. Came in late. Mr. Fusco?
Is this the one piece that we sometimes would get the list of everything that's kind of like all the items? Is this the piece?
Not really. That piece is coming.
Okay,
It'll be
okay,
one of
'cause I
these.
remember
yeah.
seeing
So all
that all the
the
time.
next 4 pieces are all purchasing pieces for.
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
So
that's
this
it.
this
Those
is
are
not
the
that
ones.
one. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so with this piece, there's a motion for consent on the floor, I believe, or can someone make that motion?
Consent agenda, please.
Consent? Anybody second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda it is. Item number 4, ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or their designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of advertising for bids for the purchase of annual subscriptions and maintenance packages for the software currently used by various departments of the city through December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this ordinance covers all of our software maintenance for all of the city's main applications that it uses throughout its department. So because it's not practical to look for a new software package every year, most of our software packages, we renew them every year. This covers the annual maintenance on all those packages.
Very good. About how many packages?
It would be several dozen,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, I figured. Is consent agenda
Consent is
okay?
fine, yeah.
Okay. Motion for consent, anybody?
So moved.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 5, ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or their designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the purchase of materials and services needed by the various divisions and departments of the city for a period of time not to exceed 5 years, approving the specifications therefore and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is what we refer to as our bid ordinance. So this ordinance will list a number of services and commodities that the city regularly purchases for our departments to such a frequency that it would not really be practical to bring every piece in. So this just covers the core services and goods that the city gets. So it lists all of those commodities and it allows us to enter into agreements for those services or commodities for up to a 5-year period.
Right, I see on the list as far as motor oil and
Correct,
salt. Yeah, very good. Consent agenda?
Consent,
This?
yeah.
Okay. Motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Consent agenda for item number 5. Item number 6, ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or their designee to enter into an agreement or agreements without the formality of advertising for bids for the purchase of miscellaneous supplies, services, repair parts, and labor for machinery and equipment used by various divisions and departments of the city for a period of 1 year, authorizing payment, therefore, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is what we refer to as our no-bid ordinance. So this ordinance will list specific companies that we use for purchasing certain items. And these are items that are very proprietary in nature, certain parts suppliers and things like that, that really there's only one supplier that would meet the specifications of, what a lot of these are in our service division and they have very specialized parts. So all of these, vendors are ones that we use on a regular basis, but they have very specialized parts and services that we need.
Right, like for instance, Lightner Tire.
Correct.
Or our scrap tires.
Yeah.
Very good.
Consent, yeah.
Very good. Motion? And a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda for item number 6. And our last and final piece, number 7, ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into and execute and deliver a cooperative agreement with the Development Finance Authority of Summit County in connection with the issuance of bonds by the authority to finance the cost of certain improvements to Canal Park Stadium and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is going to be a bond issuance that we do through the Summit County Development Finance Authority, and it will finance a new scoreboard at the Canal Park Stadium. So the existing scoreboard is about 11 years old. I'm told that they typically have about a 10-year life. So this will finance a new scoreboard for the stadium for next year. The debt service to pay off these bonds will be paid through the lease of that the baseball team pays us. So it will be covered by the lease. So, and the cost of the improvements is about $3.5 million.
It is. It is. Interesting. They last 10 years and we're on year 11, or something like that.
Yeah. So they got a good life out of the old one. Yeah.
Okay. And your pleasure on this is?
This one we would like to pass if we could. Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Motion and a second over here by Mr. Fusco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed.
Thank you.
Suspension of the rules it is. Thank you. No other items coming before us? Well, there might be one other item coming before
We
us.
do have an ARPA update today, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Thanks. An ARPA update.
Mr. Chair, before we move into that, you do have an item under time on the regular agenda. Is that something that the committee would like to address today?
Yeah, so this was the appropriation ordinance, the amendment to our appropriations. Yeah.
I'm sorry. We can discuss that. This is the first reading that we had last month, or last week. Okay.
Yes, would you like
Can I
me to read it
that
in? Would you like me to read it again?
Okay.
Yep. This is the ordinance amending ordinance number 110-2024, passed March 25th, 2024, which established the annual appropriation for the current expenses, other expenditures, and the capital outlays of the city of Akron for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Clerk Viviano. So yes, we definitely discussed this last time. Was there any other discussions regarding this item? We were taking time on this. Any committee members or any council members? Okay, seeing and hearing none.
So if there are no further questions, I guess we would ask for passage. Yeah.
The budget amendment?
Correct, yes. Yeah. For 24, correct, yeah, yeah.
Is there any ARPA funding involved in this? Well, we're going to be talking about it.
We will be talking about it. Did we amend for, I don't think we amended in the ARPA fund, yeah.
Nothing has changed whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion to suspend the rule? Is it a suspension of the rules?
Yes, you would need
Okay.
to suspend the
This
rules
is
to
the
pass.
second time.
Correct.
Okay, can I get a motion to suspend the rules? With a favorable report?
Suspend the rules.
Got a motion?
Second.
There's a second? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good. We'll suspend the rules on that. Thank you so much. And now, we have, without further ado, our ARPA update. Okay.
Thank you for having us. So,
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank
Go
you for
ahead.
having us,
Sure, thank you.
Chair. Today, I have with me here Mitch Lindstrom from Guidehouse, and we're going to brief you on where we're at with ARPA in 2024 and really highlight what we've done throughout the year. So we like to start off by reminding everyone kind of the ARPA journey. In 2021, the city was awarded $145 million of American Rescue Plan Act funds. The first thing that we did was a request for proposal.
I'm sorry, this is in here?
I did not get this yet.
Oh, okay.
We can forward it to you after. Yeah. In 2021, the first thing that we did was we received $145 million, and we did an RFP for consulting services to help us monitor these funds. Because of a couple of factors, the amount of strings that are attached to them, along with city personnel restraints, we did a comprehensive RFP, and we selected Guidehouse to assist us in monitoring and complying with the use of funds.
Hello again. Mitch Lindstrom, Guidehouse. I've been supporting the city of Akron for just about 3 years now, overseeing the grants management associated with your American Rescue Plan funding. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm wearing my Guidehouse evidence-based policymaking hat and lead our practice for our national firm. As it comes to where we're at in this journey, we're approaching a monumental deadline for this federal legislation, which is the obligation cliff. So December 31st, 2024, the city's $145 million in change award needs to be fully obligated. And so what we're going to talk about today and share a little bit is not only some of the successes with the funding that's been spent to date, but also highlight the work we've been doing in partnership with the city's finance department to get all those dollars obligated. And so that's a positive story that we're running up against. But it's also to highlight the funding that the city has. We have until 2026 to expend each one of those dollars, right? And so the projects will highlight there's no differences from the last time we were sitting here in January or February, but we'll give you a full progress update. Yeah, and so another important element I constantly remind folks is the guidance from the U.S. Treasury Department has been ever evolving, right? And so for the obligation period, each year thus far, the Treasury has produced additional guidance. Sometimes that's an additional constraint on what local governments and states can do in terms of obligating these dollars. And at times, it's also allowed for additional flexibility and clarity. And so I just preview these just to highlight the evolving nature of the regulations associated with this funding and want to uplift that the city has taken advantage of the flexibility, but also stayed within the guidelines for compliance reasons. And so before we really kind of jump into the numbers, having gotten to see how American Rescue Plan dollars have been invested across our entire nation, I think a few things stand out this year. This was one of the years where the city of Akron began to fully realize some of those plans and investments that were made in early 2021, 2022. Some of those in a collaborative nature, where the city decided to provide a portion of funding to a larger community-based project. So we have the things like opening up a new healthcare center in West Akron in partnership with I Promise. You have the launch of a new evidence-based community violence intervention program, which is a consortium or really several grantees in your larger violence intervention and prevention grant program. You have the mobile hygiene unit with Forever Our Children was one of the investments that came to fruition this year, and then Better Kenmore, who received a small portion through the CDC grant program, opened up their new headquarters, which they redeveloped a once blighted building into a mixed-use development. You also have some of your major places and spaces investments coming to full fruition. And there's been a lot of excitement. I don't think I need to tell this audience too much about those. But at Davis opening up, you have Lock 3, the first phase of your Rail to Trail initiative in Rubber City's Heritage Trail. And then one of the CDC grants went to Habitat, which supported the planning and implementation of the renovations at Boss Park. It's important to note that these are not all of the impacts by any means that these dollars have had this year. And it's not representative of those other impacts that were had in years past, like the renovations in Joy Park and a handful of other awards and investments. If you go to the next slide, we can also begin to touch on, hey, let's take a snapshot of some of the numbers, right? Your investments in lead line, renewal and disconnect program, there's about 551 lead service lines removed with your ARPA dollars this year alone, and 501 galvanized house lines. You had about 18,000 plus feet of water main replaced. That equates to 3.4 miles, or nearly over a 5K for you runners out there. 33 community-based organizations were provided funding and 33 projects via the Violence Intervention and Grant Program that attributed to about $2.3 million worth of investments and expenses this year alone, just in the Violence Intervention and Prevention Program. EANDC was provided a CDC grant program or grant this year that resulted in 81 low-income households, rental units, receiving air conditioners, some of which did not have them previously, and other interior upgrades. You had the well is finished up about 34 homes thus far that they're renovating in the Middlebury neighborhood. The Akron Home Repair Program, comprising of all of its partners, old and new, has accomplished either completed their home repairs or are currently under construction. We're at about 92 homes this year alone. Years previously, the last 2 years, you've averaged around 75 homes per year. So we're starting to see that tick up, and we'd anticipate it to continue into next year. We also had about 943 individuals benefit from your Akron Cares program this year. And it's important to acknowledge that that is representative of only half of a year's worth of funding.
I'd like to point out that over the course of the Akron Cares program, we have assisted homeowners and families to about the tune of 7,200 assistance programs.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty successful program.
Yep. And then you all know well, there's about 2,897 doorbell cameras that had been distributed by council and the latter yet this year. And so those are not by any means all of the impact metrics for the year, but a handful worth highlighting of where these dollars went and how the benefits have been realized.
So where we're at now, as we've previously stated, we're 100% committed. What we're reflecting here on this slide is the difference between committed, which is everything that we as a city have stated that we're going forward with, obligated, which is the amount that's currently reported in the Federal Treasury's portal. So the obligated amount, this 89% represents everything through the third quarter activity of 2024. The final 11% will be reported to the Federal Treasury in the January 2025 report, and that will be considered what is appropriate for completion of the obligations of funds by December 31st. And then as of Friday, we have spent $111 million of the funds so far. So just under 75% of the funds have been spent to date.
From a spending standpoint, you are on pace to meet that final 2026 obligation. If anything, we've crossed the threshold this year in terms of spending. You know, early on, for those of you who were present, there was a lot of turmoil just generally around the country and cities about how slow funding started to make its way out of bureaucracies and into the communities. And that was due to the ambiguity and complications associated with the funding and the COVID-19 pandemic. But just as of this year, you've now crossed the threshold in terms of being ahead of where we projected. We had done a model for the finance department of how much you would want to spend per quarter to be on pace to make sure that each of those dollars were invested before the deadline. And so that's what that dotted line represents, is our initial model. And you can see we've had liftoff since then. And that's largely due to some of the larger capital projects coming to full fruition and each of the grant programs that the city had rolled up, whether they be the violence prevention or the home repair, actually being fully stood up and granting funds and folks seeking their reimbursements. Yep. You want to go on this one? Yeah, and then here we have a breakdown. We have a breakdown of all of your projects, where they're at in terms of, yeah, it's a lot to fit into one slide. But generally speaking, there is, in terms of differences from last time, there shouldn't be any differences. I think we split out lead line into home line, which is 2 different lead line programs. But the key takeaway here is that for the first time, the city is in a place where you have more projects spending funds and completed than ones that are not started. Oh, yeah.
I think we've found a way that we can see it on our screens.
Oh, glorious.
Again, I do want to point out, we are going to share this after. We were just working at getting it.
It's okay. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But we'd like to see it. So we could ask her questions now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, I think if we just go into the Zoom link that was developed by. Okay, gotcha. So is that in our email?
Glorious.
Hello, is anybody talking?
They're reviewing the slides currently.
Oh, okay. Are we taking questions or what, Mr. Lombardo?
Well, right now, we were just all trying to get into the Zoom link for the meeting so we could see the slide, Councilwoman. So once we do that, we'll continue with the presentation, and then we can go with questions, okay?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
You guys in it? And, okay, I just gotta. Okay, all right. All right, we can share. We can share. It's not a biggie. Okay. Mitch, you can continue. Thank you.
Yeah. Happy to respond to questions on the project. Did you have another element on that one before we hit our last slide, and then we can kind of open it up for discussion?
So really the point of this slide is really just to show that a majority of the projects are either completed or past the point of completion that we feel comfortable that they will be fully expended by 2026. So that doesn't remove the obligation for monitoring these projects on any capacity, whether it's Akron Cares in tracking what has been spent, or if it's the mobile hygiene unit and getting their report for who they served with the operating of the shower bus, or even just the completion of Lock 3 in the vision plan. This slide is just to show that not only have we committed, but we really are on track with spending everything that we've committed to.
Next slide. And then really beyond 2024, what's left, right? So there's still about 16 projects, as you can, there's still about 16 projects left for the city to monitor and execute on. Some of those through community partnerships and some of those are city-led, right? And so in 2025 and 2024, there's going to need to continue to be having project managers track the spending of those projects, the performance, making sure the costs are allowable, and being on top of those through completion. In addition, each quarter, the city has, I believe there's 9 quarterly and performance reports that are due to the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, that the city has an obligation. So that's always going to be top of mind. The last one being submitted in April 30th of 2027. And then, of course, federal award closeout. So this is a process that takes place with any federal grant, which is ticking and tying, making sure that you do a last review of all documentation. And so there will be additional preparedness done in 2025 to make sure that the city is ready for that, and really kind of audit readiness for the Treasury, from the Treasury, I should say.
Yeah, and with that, we're happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I see Councilwoman Linda Mobian would like to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you go back to the previous slide, please? When I look at some of these projects that have opened or finalized, like the Ed Davis Center, it didn't reach the full 12 point some million. Does that mean that we still got some outstanding things to pay?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are a few items, soft costs, that aren't necessarily related to construction, and quite frankly, a few construction-related invoices that we are anticipated but have not been invoiced for yet.
Okay. Now, the housing repair program, is this the home repair program 2.0, or this both of them?
That's both of them, where they're at combined as of today.
And we spent over $9 million.
Yes.
I know, I can't go down.
We'll talk about that later. The medical debt relief, I thought it was only 500,000.
The final contract for services included is $525,000, and they are currently working to negotiate with the hospitals.
Now, I understand from someone who called me last week that there are some hospitals that are not interested in negotiating this. Is that going to be reduced or what? Do you know what's going on, or that's to be determined?
So we have been having discussions with what is now undue medical debt. Previously, it was RIP medical debt. They are, looking at the potential for purchasing debt out in the marketplace. We're getting updates from them. So we do have another call either later this week or early next week to figure out where they are with that process.
Just one more question, Mr. Chair. The homeless support programs, do we have a list of the programs that we are supporting with this $450,000?
I'm going to have Ms. Helen Tomic speak to that. So primarily in the past 2 weeks, we brought to council both the contract for continuum of care, and we also brought one for the warming centers, but I will let Ms. Tomic speak to that.
Now, let's just clarification. The continuum of care funds that we're getting on an ongoing basis are separate from these dollars, are they not?
That's correct, they are.
Okay.
Go ahead, Helen.
So about 3 weeks ago, we brought to council legislation that included continuum of care support through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that was for about $300,000. In addition to that, we also brought to council on December 2nd legislation for $150,000 for the continuum of care to assist in building capacity building as they move forward in the next couple of years and seek other grant opportunities. Also, the reporting from HUD is getting more intensive, so we're working to support them in that avenue as well. The other $250,000 is a contract with Community Support Services in partnership with the Peter Morin Center to provide overnight shelter to those that are on the streets when the temperature reaches 15 degrees. And that is going to fund CSS December 1st, 2024 through December 31st of 2026.
Okay. So, so this is future stuff.
Correct.
Okay. So basically, what I would like to do going forward until we spend all this money, if you could separate out the ARPA dollars from the ongoing dollars that we're getting, because I was under the impression that those are ongoing dollars. But we can talk about that later. Thank you very much. Those are my questions for now,
All right,
Mr.
thank you.
Chief.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? Who are you pointing to? Oh, Mr. Fusco, sorry.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I know there was a time whenever we had worked on and there were some expenditures there. I thought, referencing some of the small businesses after the COVID, trying to help them out.
Yep.
Where
That is,
see that? Oh.
there's.
Oh, I see it. Is that it?
Yeah, Small Business Hardship Grant Program, that is the partnership in the grant program. We supported the city and Akron Chamber with standing up that provided
Good.
Awards. And then there was a separate kind of incubator, micro business collaboration that I believe is, it was about $750K that went to Bounce. And a few other kind of racial equity oriented organizations for small business support.
Yeah, okay, good, thanks. I want to piggyback on what Linda had mentioned, referencing the medical debt relief. And I understand that there is, rumors out there that it's hard to get over, and work with some of the hospitals. The thing of it is that money is committed, right?
It is currently committed.
Yeah.
To this program, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Committed. So therefore, there wouldn't be I just want to make sure that it goes toward that, because I understand that there's a possibility of a secondary market acquisition by not going directly to the hospitals.
That is one
is
of the
correct.
possibilities we're looking at in terms of, instead of purchasing directly from the hospitals, it would be purchased on the secondary market.
Okay, good to know. And then secondly, now I know with, this council had approved the mayor, basically going forward, and I understand that was perhaps any thought, how are other cities doing out there in terms of their expenditures? And this deadline that's like right around the corner, how are other cities, because I recall like a year or two ago, we had talked briefly about that. How are they doing?
Definitely. Great question. We actually completed some benchmarking early in the summer, again, comparing the city of Akron against what we define for our population as peer cities, similar demographics, size of budgets, Rust Belt cities, and the city is up there. I think you scored second out of the sample size of 11, and those peers were like Grand Rapids, Michigan, Toledo, Dayton, New Jersey City, and a handful of others where we looked at their investments. And you're at the pack. I was just telling these two
I want to
gentlemen.
compliment these guys too. And you,
Yeah.
Mitch, we've had several conversations. Thank you for all your effort, guys. Because we are, I understand other cities are really stumbling.
Yeah, and we've gone through, along with Mitch and Guidehouse and the finance team and all of our departments, have gone through a pretty extensive process to make sure that we are not going to return any money back to the federal government.
Most folks are
That's the
sick
goal.
of seeing me and hearing me show up in their
goal.
email
So,
inboxes.
no, kudos to everyone involved in that. But if we could dive back just for 1 second in referencing the medical debt relief. As I mentioned before, we had given that to the mayor a couple years ago to quarterback this thing. And, but in terms of Sham, as he had mentioned, Mayor Malik, that, you guys are bringing everything to us. I'm just wondering if there is going to be a change with the medical debt relief, would we see something next week? Or are we going to be able to pin it up and make sure we're going forward on that? Or we just have to wait for the meeting, or where are we at?
I think we can just say we're reviewing our options right now.
Correct.
Okay. It's been some time, and I know that it takes a long time to get through all this in terms of the medical debt relief and collecting all the data and all the information and everything. And I'm just hoping that, this can go forward. It was a priority of this council. I know that, and.
Thanks.
So do we.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. One question I had was that, roughly 25% of the commitment is for general operating expenses.
Yeah.
I just see that, I can remember that we had about 7 different buckets to put this 145, right?
Yeah.
10 million youth violence, some streets and roads, water, I can't remember them all. I don't remember is some of those programs in that general operating, is that what I'm missing?
So a lot of the general operating expenses, we have to go back to the effects of COVID.
Okay.
And as a city, we were not necessarily immune to the effects of COVID. So when we were electing to how to utilize the funds, we did a couple of different options. We did do one-time bonuses for a couple of departments. Everyone got a bonus at one point. Everyone that was not an elected or appointed official. And we also used a decent amount of funds, about 30 million, for police and fire staffing salaries. So that way we could cover our costs. As we do have, we've mentioned it before, there have been an increase of overtime, really starting with COVID, that has not come down, and we really want to maintain a level of services.
And in those initial buckets that at the time Mayor Horrigan and council were looking at, this set of funds that you just referenced, I believe the terminology that you were using at the time was budget stabilization.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
that's representative
All
of
right.
that bucket, plus a few of the one-time expenses and bonuses, where if we were to qualify under,
Yeah, so premium pay, the bonuses that we talk about are a separate item. That's the second item on this list.
yeah,
I see
Where
it.
we did the premium pay.
yep.
Okay. Councilwoman Amobian?
Yeah, a couple of things. When you talk about the general operating expenses or the administration, which one of those would encompass the fact that staff were working from home and did we lose any funds because of that? I mean, some communities were challenging.
So yes, there was an impact on our income tax collections due to work from home, and that was the primary reason that the grant allowed for what we're calling budget stabilization. So we used that basically to offset taxes that we did not get in order to cover our staffing costs for police and fire.
Yep. And so you weren't
So
allowed.
where's that?
Oh, sorry.
Where is that located?
So that is the item it's about 2/3 of the way down the page. It's called general operating expenses.
Okay, that's the one. Okay.
And
So we've spent 32 million,
Correct.
and you plan to spend approximately another 3-point-some million?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There's 32 out of 35, yeah.
Yes, we intend on using that.
The other thing the other area that we spend a lot of time talking about and focusing on and having problems with is the homelessness. And I see the one area close to the bottom. And where else would we find, I know a few of the dollars that Ms. Tomei just spoke to would help us with some of the people, getting them off the streets for a temporary period of time. Is there, and I know that the the bus, $75,000 we gave there is to help that issue. Is there anywhere else where we are really addressing that problem, which is the major?
So what we've done with ARPA to this point is primarily between, as you mentioned, both the shower bus and these programs that we're moving forward with now. Those two areas are primarily how we've assisted trying to do some small programs really for emergency services.
And Helen can.
In addition to that, about a month ago, the Continuum of Care applied to the Department of Housing and Urban Development for additional COC funds. I believe that application was for about $7 million. And about 4 weeks ago, the city released a notice of funding availability for rental assistance. We released about $650,000. We received those applications about 2 weeks ago. We are in the process of reviewing them, and we'll come back to council in the next couple of weeks with recommendations for funding rental assistance. That's utilizing HUD home dollars and HUD home ARPA dollars, which council approved about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm mainly focusing on the ARPA dollars. Okay. The areas that we try to address with these dollars, because that's a major problem we have, and just curious as to what areas other than the ones I've identified.
Okay. Do you have any other further questions? Councilwoman Amobian?
I think that's it for now. We're going to get this slide.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Fusco?
Thank you, Chairman. Can we get how this was expended by ward?
For the most part.
Yes.
I've got a complicated answer to that. So luckily, in partnership with Darren early on, or with IT, a lot of the grant programs, we were able to capture some geographic data. When it's individual beneficiaries, that's where it gets a little bit fuzzy, but we can...
Like the shower bus.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair.
There are going to be some citywide, or if we say we don't have the granularity of data, but we can definitely work with the finance department. We'll get pretty much all the way there.
Right, and I'd like to put the caveat that especially with a lot of the violence intervention programming activities,
right,
that's a city-wide activity. So
copy that.
I think we will provide it, but we will caveat like those types of activities.
Yep.
Just divide by 10, maybe.
Perfect. Yeah. No, that would be helpful. Just like I said, I think for all of us.
Yeah.
Under the where did I see it here? I believe it was the citizen engagement. We're not quite all the way through, and I looked at, are we updating that, the app thing, or is that just kind of?
That's 2 pieces, right? I believe that's 2 pieces. So there's a portion of our website and some of the surveys that both the previous administration and the current administration are now using, along with administration of the ARPA website and dashboard. So we do have a real-time Akron, Ohio RescuePlan.com, I believe, which you can go there and see the expenses tracked in real time.
Okay, good, but the app itself, we're not really updating that, right?
Yeah, that's the
different.
Community engagement software that the city purchased.
The data's being updated. I mean, if
The one that I had seen this morning, I didn't see it, but and maybe we're just talking about apples and tangerines or something. Afterwards, we can get together and talk about it. That's all. Thank you.
Very good. Well, I'd like to thank you for that presentation. Those numbers are telling.
Yeah.
They're positive.
It's a positive message.
I'm a numbers guy, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure
More to come.
did too. So thanks for coming, Mitch. Mike, thank you. Steve, thanks for everything today.
Thank you.
And without any other further business, the Budget and Finance meeting is adjourned.
That is our final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet in special session at 5 o'clock. Thank you.